Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, Blake the Book Eater here, and today we're going to talk about all the books that I read in January to kickstart my 2022 reading year. So I actually had a very, very good reading month. Almost all of them were like really good hits. I did not read a bad book this month, so the reading gods have smiled upon me. And yeah, I'm very excited for all my reading goals this year. If you want to check out that video, I will link it because I have a very ambitious 2022 reading goal. Well, like, it's a multitude of goals, it's not like one goal. I'm not going to do 100 books like I did last year. I think I set my goal as like 75 because like the 100 books thing was stressing me out a lot. So I want to like casually get there. I'm still going to get there probably, but like I want to like mentally make it easier on myself. The first book that I read this month, this year, was Near the Bone by Christina Henry. If you have not read Christina Henry, any of her books, I highly recommend. She has this like fantastic style and way of storytelling. They're all like really dark horror, but like also extremely readable. I spent New Year's like kind of up in like a cabin, and so the main characters in this book, it is an isolation kind of horror thriller. It was funny because I didn't really know much about it going into it. So this book follows Maddie, and she has been living in this cabin on this top of this mountain with her husband William for as long as she can remember. William is very physically abusive to her, so very heavy domestic violence trigger warning. And she is very young and she cannot remember kind of how she got there. She can't remember her past, how she came to be with this older man who is her husband. So lots of like little triggers with that, but it gets very intense because there is something on the mountain with them. So Maddie has to deal with trying to get out of this, you know, terrible situation that she's been in for a long time that she is not happy in. And also there's a monster out there who is tearing up animals and leaving them hanging in the treetops for them to find. And then when a couple strangers stumble onto the mountain, Maddie has to try to protect them not only from the creature, but her insanely jealous and terrifying husband. This read, oh boy, it was a journey because I didn't expect it to be as dark as it was. I think I glanced at the summary before like I got into it, like I didn't really know what it was about. And I thought that it was about a woman with like a child who was like stuck on the top of the mountain with a monster. Completely different vibe. You know, we have, you know, this very dark tale of like domestic abuse, child kidnapping, and like just Maddie's strength and like her trying to survive was just so inspiring. It was the heart of this novel. It was just, she was such a great character, and I was rooting for her every step of the way. The monster was scary, William was terrifying, and I just could not put this book down. I gave this 4 stars out of 5. I really enjoyed it, and yeah, a great way to start off my year. The second book I read this year was Xoxo by Xoxo. Kind of funny, but yeah, this book was everything. I am a huge fan of both K-pop and K-dramas, and this kind of combined my love of the two into a perfect little package. So this follows a Korean American girl named Jenny, and she one night meets this boy in Koreatown. His name is Jae-woo, and they get along very well, and then circumstances kind of change. She, you know, gets apart from this boy, and then it's like, oh, I'm never going to see him again, but you know, that was nice. And then a couple of months later she moves to Korea to be with her grandmother, and starts going to this like performing arts school because she's a cellist, and as a former cellist I could relate to that. But she comes to find out that Jaewoo is one of the members of one of the most popular K-pop boy bands in the entire world, and he goes to the same school as her. So yes, it is it's a romance. It's a YA romance. It's got some cliches, but it was just so fluffy, so fun. I loved reading it. I loved the characters. I was so invested. The writing was fantastic, and yeah, I fell in love with this book. It's funny because I usually don't read a lot of YA, and I don't usually read a lot of romance, but this book just hit so well, and I absolutely loved it. If you are a fan of K-dramas, K-pop, if you love YA romance, this is a book that you need to pick up. And if you couldn't tell, I obviously gave this book 5 stars. Next, I read The Night Circus, which has been a long time coming. I've had this book on my shelf since like 2016. I've always told myself I was going to read it, and I never did. And I feel like everybody has been screaming at me to read an Erin Morgenstern book for like the longest time. And yeah, I finally did it. I finally read it. And it was just utterly magical. It was so transportive, and it felt like you were like reading a fairy tale. I would have to say the prose was the strongest thing about this novel. Some people might come at me for this, but I didn't really care about the characters. The characters were, it felt like, you know, when you're listening to a fairy tale, when, you know, you're told about the characters and you're like, okay, but you don't really like feel for the characters. There's not a lot of characterization. I mean, there was characterization in here, but like it felt almost kind of surface level. But in a way, I also kind of liked that because it added to the fairy tale-esque feeling of the novel. But yeah, I didn't really care about the characters. I loved the story, I loved the prose, I loved the language, I loved the visuals, but I just wasn't really invested in the emotional relationship of the characters. So I did really enjoy this. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, and I will definitely be picking up her other book, The Starless Sea, which I've been... That's another book that I've been meaning to read for a while, but I wanted to get to this one first so I could kind of see her writing grow between novels. But yeah, she definitely has a beautiful way with words, and I would love to read more from her. Next, I read Lost Gods by Brahm for the Vintage Books and Wine live show, which was on my channel, so if you missed that, you can go check out me and my club's like full spoiler thoughts about it. But yeah, I really enjoyed this book. This is another book that has been on my shelf literally forever. I got this hardcover like years ago, and now I think like if you want to get a hardcover of this, it's like insanely expensive. So that's how long I've had this book. And I actually, last year I went and read a couple other Brahm books. Even though this was the first one I ever bought, I like wanted to hold off because I knew we were doing it for a live show. And I loved this book. This was just so imaginative. It's about a character named Chet who is basically trying to elope with his pregnant girlfriend, and he finds himself kind of torn away from Earth and sent to purgatory. So it's about his journey, his fight to try to return back to his like fiance and child, and basically having to deal with a bunch of demons and spirits and gods who are trying to kind of take control of the souls within purgatory. The world building was insane. It felt like Dante's Hell almost, like it was just so visually weird and striking. It's weird because this does have horror elements, but it definitely felt more of like a dark fantasy. It definitely felt in line with like a lot of fantasy tropes more than horror ones, even though there was definitely some like horrific moments. But yeah, this is a book that I loved seeing Brahm's illustrations throughout the book. It really brought the book to life. And but similar to Night Circus, I wasn't super attached to any of the characters. Again, it felt very much more like plot and style over substantive like emotional depth with the characters. So yeah, I didn't really care for the characters a ton, but I kind of didn't care, again, because this novel was just a roller coaster of craziness, and I loved it. So yeah, I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars, and I would highly recommend it if you're looking for like a cool dark fantasy type thing. Next, Chanel invited me onto her Krusty Club live show for She Who Became the Sun, and so that's the next book that I read this month, and oh boy, I really enjoyed this book. Again, I'll link our discussion about it, which is over on Chanel's channel, which that was a fun time. That was a great live show. But this book, this is a historical fantasy. It definitely skews more fantasy. Kind of the best comp is like, I would say Mulan, because it's following this girl who assumes her brother's identity because she her brother was destined for greatness, so she kind of takes on his mantle because she wants to have a great fate. She wants that. She desires. And this is such an interesting novel because it deals a lot with gender identity and just like sexuality, as well as, you know, otherness in kind of like ancient China. And then also, you know, big battles and, you know, taking over the provinces and like political backstabbing. So this was a lot. This book covered so much in just these pages. And this is going to be the first book in a duology. And I am kind of scared to see how the story wraps up because yeah, there's a lot of crazy things that happen in this book, but I really loved the characters. It's funny because this is the opposite of the other ones. Like, I loved the characters so much. The one kind of criticism I have of this book is that I didn't really grasp a lot of like the battles and the political stuff. The political stuff I get because that's character stuff, but like we kind of fast forwarded through a lot of the battle sequences. It was like there was a big battle happening, and then it'd be like a paragraph, and then it was like, okay, the next day. And I'm a kind of reader who loves being in the nitty-gritty with like the battle and the moments, and there was like one scene of that, but with the amount of battles that there are in this book, the ratio is not the same. So the one thing I'm hoping for in the sequel is definitely more description, but I loved the characters, I loved the themes, I loved the prose. The prose was great, and so yeah, you've seen a lot of hype on this book probably, and the hype is deserved. It's really good. 4 out of 5 stars. And the final book that I read in the month of January was On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. God, this book, yeah, this book hit different. And I know that people have been telling me to read this book for the longest time. I've been wanting to read it for the longest time, and I caved and I read it, and now I'm here. So this is Ocean Vuong's first novel. He is a poet and has published a lot of like collections and things like that. But so without saying, the prose is phenomenal. It is everything to this book, and it is what elevates this book into the stratosphere. This is about a man who is writing a letter to his mother, and this book is that letter to his mother who can't read. So it's everything he has been wanting to say that he can't say, and just the emotion behind that is just insane, and it's so well written. So this book just, wow, it was beautiful and amazing and heartbreaking, and I will read anything by Ocean Vuong now. And just like, I think the narrative itself was good, but what really just like blew me away was the writing. The writing was just insanely emotional, and this also, you know, he talks about being a queer man and kind of dealing with that. And his mother, his mom came over from Vietnam, and just there's just so much like hurt in this novel, and I can relate because my grandmother, not from Vietnam but from Japan, came here, and she refused to teach my mother Japanese because it was to fit in. It was to, you know, be normal. And then also with the character, it's, you know, his relationship, his first love was with this white boy who is a drug addict, and as someone whose experience was also that, yeah, this book just like cut me straight to the bone so many times. Yeah, I loved it. It was beautiful. I like five stars, if you can tell. This is a book that I'm going to be thinking about for a long time. I'm definitely going to go back and reread it multiple times because it's just like one of those books where I feel like you could get something out of it every time that you read it. And I highly recommend this book. Okay, well that's it. That's all the books that I read this month. And looking forward into February, which, I mean, we already are, but, you know, looking forward. The Expanse read-along is finally making a return, so me, Kaz, and Katie, we will be discussing Cibola Burn, the 4th book of the Expanse series, sometime next week, next Saturday. The date and time will be in the description. And then also at the very beginning of March, my book club, Vintage Books and Wine, will be discussing Persuasion by Jane Austen as our February novel. So if you want to read along with us, if you want to chat with us, join the Discord, and yeah, it's going to be a great time. This is my first time that I've ever read a Jane Austen book, so it should be very interesting. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and like, subscribe, do all that, and yeah, I'll see you guys next week. Bye.